Okay, so are we looking good with the visuals?
Yep.
Great. So, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Um, Bonjour, Anin, Justin Beatty and Dishnakaz, Bigish Gibin and Dishnakaz, Hadley, Massachusetts, and Dojaba. Hello, my name is Justin Beatty. In Ojibwe, I'm known as He Breaks Him Into Pieces. I'm live in Hadley, Massachusetts. I'm an Anishinaabe and Yesa, so I'm Ojibwe and Saponi descent. And I am the lead singer and drum keeper for an intertribal powwow group based here in Massachusetts called Urban Thunder.
Great. Um, did you did you grow up in the area?
No, I grew up in New York. I lived in New York until 1988 when I was 16, well, about to turn 16. And then I lived in Connecticut for a few years. And then I moved here to go to school in 92. And I've kind of lived on and off in the area since then.
So, what school did you go to?
In New York, I went to Roosevelt Junior Senior High School, and then in the middle of my junior year, had to move to Connecticut, and then I went to New Milford High School, and then I went to UMass Amherst, where I was a double major art and legal studies.
So, you said you've been basically living here ever since UMass.
Yeah. I came here in the spring of '92. Um, I've had a few like times away. I lived in Boston for a little while in the mid '90s, and then in 2005 I moved back to New York, where I was working at an independent record label. I went from being an unpaid intern to director of operations in about 2 years. Uh, and then I left New York and moved to Boston in 2009 and lived there uh, until about, well, until 2015 is when I moved back here permanently. But my son lives out here, my family lives here, some of my family lives here. So I was coming back here at least a few times a month, every month, even during that period. So, yeah, I like it out here.
Yeah. What do you like? What do you like out here?
It's a pleasant change of pace from the city. It's not necessarily like as like more calm because you have a couple of universities in the area, a few colleges in the area, so there's still a lot of people, a fair amount of people at certain times a year, but it's just a different pace. People aren't in as much of a rush to do things all the time. Like when you're in New York, there's always something to do. There's always a next move to make. Boston is pretty similar in that regards, but out here it's like okay, you know, you got time to enjoy things if you plan properly. And I've met a lot of really genuine people out here. People that are comfortable with being who they are and like not the pretense that you have to put on when you're in other places. So that's nice. It's good school system here. My son grew up here, and he's got a pretty solid education. Um, there's enough businesses and things to keep it entertaining without it being overwhelming or boring. So it's good. It's good, and you're fairly close to a lot of different things. I mean, you're 2 hours from Boston, 3.5 from Manhattan. 2 hours from two major casinos on the East Coast. The coast is not too far. You can go north to me. You can be in Canada in a few hours. It's not. It's a reasonable area. I like it.
Cool. Um, so, how long have you? How long have you played with Urban Thunder, or when did it come into being?
Okay. Well, Urban Thunder as specifically as the group Urban Thunder started in 2009. Uh, my friend Mike Mastronzi and I had sung together previously in college, and we were living in Boston along with another friend of ours, Warren Griffin. Um, and Mikey and I, we just kind of wanted to start singing again. We had been away for a few years each, and so we decided like let's try and start up another drum group. And we got permission to practice in the basement of the North American Indian Center of Boston, which is in Jamaica Plain, the Jamaica Plain section of Boston. And we put up flyers and said, we're starting a drum group and we're looking for singers. And we thought we were going to get like this big influx of singers, and that didn't happen. Because we realized it's such a specialized thing that there's only so many people that know how to do it and know how to do it properly. And most of those folks already sing with other groups. And so, we, my friend Warren, he was interested in singing again. And we had a few other people who came, saw the flyers and decided they wanted to give it a shot. And out of that, what became Urban Thunder, that's the initial sort of flashpoint for Urban Thunder itself. Urban Thunder is kind of an offshoot of a previous drum group, but with its own identity and name. Urban Thunder started in about 2009.
Could you talk about that identity? Or?
Yeah. So, first of all, we're an intertribal drum group, and so what that means is we're made up of people from different native nations. It's not like all just Mi'kmaq or all Dene or all, Anishinaabe or any one particular nation. We have guys that are from South America. Mike is Kabaya Indian from Colombia. Warren is Yupik Eskimo from Alaska. Hailu is White Mountain Apache from Arizona, New Mexico. I forget. My family, part of my family is from Canada. We've got guys who are Wampanoag from the Cape, who are the people who the Pilgrims first met. We're made up of singers from different cultural backgrounds, different tribal backgrounds. But we sing together at powwows. And so our identity is based in us really trying to find the ways that we all work together. We all come together as Native people to provide songs for events. Some people confuse this idea of pan-Indianism, which is kind of like, this all-encompassing sort of idea that like all Native folks do the same things, which is completely untrue. And intertribalism is more so an understanding that there are a bunch of different groups that find ways to work together, but they still represent and express their individual cultural identity. So part of that is the main is a main piece of the identity of Urban Thunder. Where, as far as I know, we were the only drum group that really expressly presented itself as being natives from a city. There's other groups that are from cities, but there's not really any groups that refer to themselves as urban or city or anything of that nature. So we kind of wanted to give a nod to the fact that there's a lot of Native folks that live in cities that don't live on the res, or they're not in rural communities. There's a large portion of Native folks that are from the city that still practice tradition and still are involved with cultural events. So we thought that was important. Another piece of the identity is, from what I've heard from people that know us, is that our song selection is made up of two kinds of songs. Fairly complicated word songs in about 8 or 9 different indigenous languages, and really melodic, what are called straight songs, which are songs that don't actually have words, but they just have vocables, which is just a syllable sung at a different pitch to carry the melody. So I think those are probably the things that separate us from a lot of other groups and kind of give us our identity. Yeah.
So, I just want to try something with the microphone. Is that all right?
Yeah. I guess it's more important what works for you. Make sure you guys get
Yeah.
good sound quality.
As long as it's not uncomfortable or anything.
Yeah, no. I mean, as long as you're like not jabbing me in the neck with it.
Yeah.
think I'll be
Snap this into your vocal cords. And be good to-
Yeah, sure. Why not? Graft it right on there. Always wanted to be a cyborg anyway. You know, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Can you actually, I know that we've talked about it already previously, but can you talk again about Rolling Deep, your drum group from UMass?
Yeah. So in about 1995, myself and 3 other Native students at UMass, Mashamoquit Miles, Cameron Kutch, and Harry Harding, we decided that we wanted to have a drum group, and we wanted to have something for the Native community here at UMass that would also allow students who came in after us to kind of be connected to it, you know, sort of create like kind of a legacy situation, right? And so we started singing, and that group, we never really developed a name for it. It was just, you know, 4 guys that loved powwow singing, and then, you know, other students came in and started practicing with us. Over time, that evolved into like a pretty consistent group of guys singing together. And we used to practice at the Josephine White Eagle Cultural Center, which is in the basement of the Chadbourne dorm on the UMass campus. And so at the time, this is mid to late 90s, we had a fairly large presence as far as Native students go on campus. But a lot of the general public just isn't aware of Native people as part of everyday life. Like, we take place in this historical context, not in the modern context for a lot of people. And we have practices at the Culture Center, and there would be, you know, students who didn't know that there was a cultural center there, or didn't know who we were, or what was going on, and they would just kind of they would do things that were less than pleasant. We had a pair of guys that lived above the cultural center that would reach out of their window and bang a hockey stick onto the window of the cultural center. They would relieve themselves out of the window. They would yell and, you know, say pretty horrible stuff. And for a long time, we just kind of like, you know what, brush it off. And eventually got to a point where we were just tired of it. And that one particular day, I believe the guy like banged on the window with this hockey stick and then urinated out the window, like onto the windowsill of where we were. And there was probably about 8 of us at practice, maybe 6 or 7. And we were like, you know what, we got to go upstairs and say something. And so we got up and we started going, and the other students who were just hanging out at the culture center were like, oh, what's going on? And so we went upstairs, and we go and knock on the kid's door, and I'm standing in the front, and one kid opens the door, and he looks, and he sees, you know, 15 kids standing in the hallway, none of whom looked pleased, you know. And I think he was pretty sure they knew where we were from. And we were like, cut it out. Like, this is it. You do that again, and it's actually going to be like a real problem. Like, and they were like, oh, you know, I'm so sorry. It's like, I mean, come on, man. You should know better than that. Like, this isn't your house. You wouldn't go bang on somebody else's property like that. It's just not cool. And they apologized, and we were going back downstairs, and Warren, who was one of the singers back then, who's a member of the group now, was like, man, we're rolling deep. And Joyce Vincent, who was the director of the Culture Center at the time, heard that and was like, that's your name. That's the drum group's name. And it just stuck, you know. And so we were known as Rolling Deep for quite a long time. I would say into probably like the mid 2000s. And then, like I said, I went to New York. Some of the other guys graduated and went off to other places. So the new students who came in really didn't have a base of students that were there to kind of bring them along. And then, like I said, some of us found ourselves in Boston, so we started Urban Thunder as kind of like the next phase of Rolling Deep. And then when some of us moved back here, I moved back, and Hailu, who had been singing with us, was already living out here. John moved to the area for graduate school. Anthony, who was another one of the singers, moved out here. Actually, he's living in Holyoke, but he just connected with the community not too long ago. And so, we decided like we want to keep it going, and we want to kind of have it return to the original idea, which was to have a drum group for the Native community here in Western Mass. So that's kind of the history. That's kind of where it started and where it is now.
What would you say about that community, Native community in Western Mass? I know it's different than in the East.
Yeah, it's a vibrant community, but one of the differences is there's not a specific single Native group that has a land base here that's as prominent in terms of numbers of members of the community being here. In and around Boston, you have the Nipmuc people, you have Wampanoag people, you have Massachusetts people, you have Narragansetts who are originally from like the Rhode Island area, but this whole portion of the East Coast was groups of Native folks that interacted with each other, and so their land bases, their traditional homelands are in some of these areas. Mi'kmaq people, Abenaki people, etc. Here in Western Mass, it's more of sort of this conglomeration of people that move to the area, Native folks that may be from other places that move to the area for education, for industry work, etc. And so it's a little bit more of a loose affiliation of people from different Native nations. But it's a really vibrant community. I mean, you'll get an opportunity, hopefully you guys make it to the powwow, you'll see that there's, a lot of different Native folks from different traditions. We run the gambit in what we look like. Like, we don't all look like an 8th grade social studies book picture, some short, tall, big, small, brown, light brown, whatever. But there's still there's a really good sense of, at least in my experience, of community, But people are kind of spread out, so we don't interact as much as we would like in some cases, The students at, say, Smith may not be aware of the students at Amherst, you know what I mean? And so even though there's a 5-college program that kind of fosters some of these interactions, they may just not know that that's what's going on because people aren't as prevalent in, mainstream society where people are going to things and they get to see and they go, oh, that's so-and-so, or this is this person, or like, and students are focused on their studies. They're not necessarily going out to express themselves culturally while they're at college to a certain degree. They may do that when they're home, or, being Indian doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to powwows and dancing and singing. Like, you are who you are, but, we also have a very strong affinity, I think, for one another in Western Mass. Like, we really try to be supportive of each other. Sometimes you bump heads. Some people have different ideas about how things should be done, but it's a pretty vibrant community, and it's a pretty supportive community. Like, we face a lot of the same issues as Indigenous people, regardless of where you may be from. So we understand each other in certain regards, and because this area has a pretty strong educational bent, academic bent, you're getting people that are either young and their minds are thirsty for knowledge, so they're learning about themselves, they're learning about other people, and they're building and forging new relationships. Or you have people who are, let's say professors or staff at the school that have networks here that they're willing to share with the younger people. So it's a good place for fostering those kinds of relationships and stuff. I think.
Yeah. Do you think the Josephine White Eagle Center played a big role for you?
Oh, for me, absolutely, absolutely. When I first came to school, that was really the only. That was one of two places where the Native people on campus kind of congregated. Like kind of hung out. That was considered kind of like a safe space. Like you knew you could go there, and people weren't going to be like, "Oh, what are you doing? Ew," like.
Yeah.
What? Why don't you have on feathers if you're Indian? Like it was just like you could just go and hang out and be who you were. Um, it was also a great place for strategizing and planning for events, and opportunities for the students to kind of hang out and get to know each other. For community members to like come in and hang out. There were various times they have different guest lecturers from other communities to come and talk. Um, the other place was in New Africa House. It was a program called SEBS, the Collegiate Committee for the Education of Black and Other Minority Students. And we had, during my time, there were two main academic advisors. The first one was Buddy Gwynn, who left after a couple of years, and then Renee Lopes Pocknet, who is like an older sister to me. And so she was an academic advisor. So a lot of Native students would go to talk to them because culturally your perception on how to deal with things may be different than the campus culture. And so having somebody who knows the ropes from the professional standpoint of academia and having them be someone who understands what you may be going through was really helpful. The cultural center, it got me through a lot of different and difficult times. When you can't study in your room because you've been in your room all day studying, you start to go a little stir crazy. You could go up there. There was resources there for some of the stuff that you may need. You're around other students that are kind of everybody studying for finals at the same time. So you're alone, but you don't feel alone. But some people might get distracted, but other people are motivating you to stay focused. It was really like a second home on campus. Like it was just a space to be able to go where you weren't going to have to deal with a lot of the other outside pressures when you're young and just trying to figure life out and school out and what you're going to do afterwards. It's a complicated time in a young person's life. So to have a place where you can go and just kind of decompress and be around people that kind of get it from your perspective is really helpful, and especially if they're supportive. So the Cultural Center played a really big part. I mean, they were there for us like after we part of the Goodell takeover in '97. Like the folks who were working in the Cultural Center were like, we'll talk to your professors, like we'll talk to your parents, we'll talk to whomever to help them understand like why you did this, and get you. Oh, you need to get caught up on work. Like we'll help you, find tutors or talk to your professors and see if we can get the work for you. They do things like that. It's really a community center. It's not just a cultural center. So.
What's the Goodell takeover?
So in 1997, myself and about 150, 175 students took over the Goodell building on campus, which is where the controller's office is. So that's where all the checks come from. And it was a coalition of Alana students, so African, Latino, Asian, Native American students, and white students. We took over the building to protest quite a few things that had gone on in campus that hadn't been resolved properly or addressed properly. In 1992, the administration made an agreement to increase the recruitment and retention rates of students of color, first generation students, like first generation college students, so their parents hadn't been to school before, poor students and students with children, right? Because those rates were really, really low. and so they agreed to get it up to I think it was supposed to be 20% or something like that, but they hadn't really made any moves. They hadn't really done anything, and there was a severe drop off in the number of students of color at UMass, like, either because they couldn't afford it or they didn't feel like there was any support services. And the Native community has historically been one of the smallest, if not the smallest, numbers of any ethnic group on campus. And so we took over that building for 6 days, and negotiated with the administration and fought with the administration, and they were threatening to have us all thrown out of school and arrested, and it actually got national news. Like, it was all over the news and in the papers and stuff. And then UMass kind of was like, "Ooh, this doesn't look good for us. Like, we need to figure something out." And actually, out of that, one of the things the Native students the school agreed to fund a support services program. It was called NAS, Native American Student Support Services. They gave us office space. They gave us a budget. They allowed us to help with programming. So we had like tutoring, and if somebody needed help with writing a paper or something like that, if you were having issues with any of the departments on campus, you could go there to get support to figure out how to help. And they increased our retention rates. They increased our recruitment rates. We're actually able to have a Native American freshman orientation where for any new Native students that would come in, they would come to the school and stay for a week. And, like, we'd help them set up their classes and show them around campus. Kind of like the regular orientation, but just with a little bit more of a specialized approach. They agreed to do a lot of things, and they did some of them, but then they also did stuff like they created the campus protest handbook, which is rules on how you can protest, which makes no sense whatsoever.
From the
because it's like, because if I'm doing it your way, it's not a protest, but it is what it is. But yeah, so that was a pretty important time for the Native community in terms of it was one of the first times for my generation that we took what could be perceived as a political action and made gains from it. The Native students, we took our drum in there with us. Like, everybody else brought all this other stuff, we took the drum, and we would just jam out powwow tunes and Eastern social songs, and like a bunch of the other students were like, "We love this. We want to learn how to do dance or whatever." And we taught them some of the songs, and I actually led a stomp dance when all the students came out of the building on that 6th day. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, man. It's definitely like one of the high points of my college experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of everybody that was involved with that. Everybody. I mean, we got donations from pretty much every business in town, student organizations at every other school between here and Hartford. National news coverage, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, all that stuff. It was pretty amazing. It was probably, again, the Native community being a catalyst for me in terms of understanding how, when people do come together, and they have good intentions and they're like-minded and they're trying to do things in a good way, they're really trying to be mindful of how they're going about things, that you can affect some pretty powerful change, and the drum was a part of that. The drum was a very integral part of that for us as Native people. I mean, it kind of became a symbol for other people, but for us, we knew that having the drum there was important for us, and so it kind of carried on from there.
This might not have been you probably shouldn't have been your primary focus at the time, but you don't happen to have any kind of photos or anything from the time, do you?
Yeah, I do have a couple of photos. Yeah, I can email them to you.
Cool. Yeah. Just in the future.
I specifically, I know I have photographs of the drum group at various times from back then. And I do have some pictures from Goodell as well. Like, I think I even have a picture of me standing outside looking all frazzled and haggard, like the day we come out, getting ready to sing, like, what? This is outside? What is this? But yeah, I'll email those to you.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. That'd be great. Right. Okay.
What apart of being Urban Thunder, what is in your opinion the best part about being in the group, and what is one of your favorite memories while being in the group?
One of the best things about being in the group is a sense of like family and brotherhood that we have, and not just amongst members on like that actually sit down and sing with us, but other members of the community that have shown support for us in what we try to do. You know, it's kind of like a team sport in a weird way. Like, you're with people all the time. It's the same group of people all the time. You get to know each other's personalities. You hear each other's stories. You find out what brought them to singing, like what made them want to sit down and actually learn all of the things that go into it. There's so much that goes into like learning to be a powwow singer. You know, you learn about the good times, you learn about the bad. You're there when, you know, somebody's having a baby, or when somebody passes away. You know, like, there's a very family oriented sort of nature to it that we purposely tried to cultivate. That's one of the, you know, things that makes even the tough times really worthwhile. You know, we're family. You know, we treat each other as brothers, and we go above and beyond for each other. Sometimes we want to strangle each other. You know, I mean, that's just the nature of things. Sometimes you want to hit each other in the head with steel chairs like the WWE, but you know, most of the time you're glad, like you're really glad to be able to sit down with people you know that understand who you are on a deeper level than a lot of other people, and understand the cultural responsibility of being a singer. You know, that's one of the things. One of the highlights. Let's see. There's a lot. There's a lot of highlights. I guess the most notable one in terms of something that other people can understand was being able to sing a song for the video game BioShock Infinite. Like, that was cool. That was a lot of fun. It was a very surreal experience, but it was just awesome to know. Like, first of all, if it had been any drum group, I think a lot of singers would be like, "Yo, there's powwow singers in a video game. That's dope," you know. But for it to be us, you know, like just some random group of dudes who sing, you know, we kind of happened to be in the right place at the right time, and we, you know, try to do things in a good and respectful way, and it worked out for us to be the ones. First time a powwow drum group was recorded for a video game, like, and that game has sold millions of copies. Like, technically, in a weird way, we're like the best-selling powwow group of all time. You know, we never get any credit for that. Most people don't know who we are, but like, you know, but that was an incredible experience. I mean, it was right in Quincy, Mass. We recorded in a room that was probably just about as wide as this couch. Like, it was tight. Like, it was tiny. You guys have seen our drum. Like, our drum is big, and it was four of us, and we were like only four of us, and we were basically pinned against the walls because that's how small the room is. They call it the murder room because that's where they record all the screams and stuff for video games. So like, you're in this black padded room with microphones that are like, you know, right here, like, and you're trying to sing, and it was great. It was awesome. But we had to like sign a non-disclosure agreement and everything, so we did all this recording and all this stuff, and then we couldn't even talk about it like until like the next year when the game came out in the spring. It was pretty crazy. That was a lot of fun. But you know, I mean, those things like that are cool. But what's even more cool are like the little moments, like, you know, um, being able to being asked to sing at a memorial for somebody who passed away, or first time somebody's bringing their child, their newborn, to meet the community, and they ask us to sing an honor song for them, things like that. Or when elders come up to you and they say, "Man, that was a good song. You guys really sang well." Because it makes you think, wow, like, maybe for a little while they kind of got to relive their youth. You know what I mean? So those are the things that really have an impact on me as a singer. But I don't know, man. Just come on, think about it. Just being able to say that you were in a video game, that's pretty cool, man. That's pretty dope. Not to brag, but I'm bragging. Yeah, humble brag, I guess.
So, what role does a drum group play in a powwow and in Native American culture?
Well, oops, sorry. I'm just going to put this cup over here. That way I don't have to keep moving in. So the drum is, in a lot of ways, sort of the backbone of powwow, right? And in not only powwow, but a lot of cultural events. Without the drum, there really isn't a lot of music, There's various kinds of drum. Like we have what's called a powwow drum, which is around ours is about maybe 18 inches deep, but it's probably about 32 inches in diameter. The drum the drum beat itself represents the heartbeat of all things. So it's this real sort of steady beat for the most time. It's not the doom 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 like you hear in the movies and stuff like that. If your heart's beating like that, go to a doctor because there's something wrong with you. You're sick. And the drum is, for a lot of people, it's a spiritual being. It has a certain spiritual connotation. We refer to the drum as grandfather, right? And the songs are medicine. So when you sing, there's healing in the songs. And so it's important to be able to have something that gives sort of spiritual medicine to our communities, because we have a lot of trauma. We have a lot of cultural, actual physical trauma. We have a lot of mental trauma. We have a lot of spiritual trauma. And so things that can kind of help ease some of that pain are important. Without the drum, you don't really have powwow, because that's where the music comes from, to be able to dance. Your role as a powwow singer is to be able to, you're essentially a public servant, right? You're there to provide what the community needs. So that means you have to know what songs are appropriate for what occasions. You have to know the protocols around being at the drum, as well as when you're a singer being away from the drum. You have to know the protocols for the kind of situation where you're singing, like being at a social, which is just kind of like a regular sort of gathering where there's going to be some powwow song sung, is different than being at a powwow, which is different than being at a round dance, which is different than being at a memorial, which is different than being at gourd dance, which is different than being, you know what I mean? So the roles and responsibilities are, the role is that of a public servant, the responsibilities are, it's tremendous. There's a tremendous amount of things you need to know. It's not really the kind of thing people think of it as, like, because it's just, they say, oh, it's just drumming. They think of it as like it's just a hobby you can pick up. It's really not. Like, the amount of responsibility that goes into it, the reverence with which people hold the act of being a powwow singer, like, it's important to people. It's important to culture, and so there's a certain amount of like seriousness. Is that a word? Yes. Sorry, for the moment, it fits. There's a certain amount of like respect and responsibility and gravity that accompanies being a powwow singer. And when you're not doing those things, people notice, the community notices. And so to be able to provide that for your community, like if you care about your community, be able to provide things for them to be able to have what it needs to survive or to thrive, it's a pretty cool thing. Like, if that's what you're into, you want to be able to do it and want to be able to do it well. So I think that's probably a roundabout but easy way to explain it.
Cool. Thanks. You want to?
What role has music, either in American music or just music in general, played in your life?
Oh my God, it's probably my single greatest passion, to be honest. I started learning about powwow singing and having opportunities to do it when I was about 6. I started playing drums in general in 3rd grade. I started DJing when I was 11. My father was a DJ. He was in bands. His brother, my Uncle Jerry, was in bands. My sister played drums. My cousin Mark played drums. 3 of my other cousins, played bass and keyboard and guitar, and they had a band. Like, music has just kind of always been a part of my life. Like I said, I worked at an independent record label for a few years. I worked with the Isley Brothers, the Roots, who else? Big Daddy Kane, Nas, Lauryn Hill, Game Rebellion, just tons of different well-known, not just mid-level acts, I started producing music around that time. I've done songs for TV, independent films, commercials, different independent artists. I still make music. I just finished doing some music for a documentary on Standing Rock earlier in the month. My EP is coming out probably at the end of next month. Music is it's a pretty important thing to me. I think music's one of those few things that kind of transcends so many other things. Like, music doesn't care about your age or your race or your gender, your level of intelligence, where you live. It doesn't care. Like, if it moves you, it moves you. If it's an entirely objective thing. And by the same token, it can also teach you a lot about yourself and make you introspective, or make you relive a moment from some other time, or think about somebody who you don't want to think about, all that stuff. So music's is very, very important to me. I don't think that there's any single other act of expression that touches me in the same way. Like, not only as it's directed towards me from other people, but as an expression of myself. Like, I also paint, I sculpt, I do, other things like that. But music is the one thing that, I always come back to it. I always.
Would you say you make music for a living?
No, I wouldn't say I do it for a living. I mean, it's semi-professional. I sometimes sell my music. Sometimes I get asked to create music for things and get paid for it. But it's not. It's just something I love to do. And if people want to give me money for it, cool. I mean, it's not. If I could do it full time, make music full time, like mainstream music full time, I think I would. I know I would. But if I could powwow sing for a living, I would do that in a minute. Like, you wouldn't be able to stop me. You know what I mean? Like, I have friends that's what they do. Like, they don't have any other job. They travel around the country, the United States and Canada, and sing at powwows, and make a living and feed their families. But that's all they do. And it's just amazing to me that to be able to just be a part of in America where there's this constant push to sort of homogenize people, you know what I mean? To be able to support yourself through cultural expression. Anybody being able to do that. I just think that's a beautiful thing. I mean, I think it's one of the things that makes the country of the United States of America such a beautiful experiment. You know, like they say, oh, it's a melting pot. It's not really a melting pot. It's more like a salad. You know, like you get a scoop and it's like a bunch of different flavors. Like if you get your melting pot, you get stew. Everything kind of tastes the same. Yeah, it's brown. You know, that's kind of what's going on. But you know, but with the salad, like you can appreciate the individual pieces and flavors, and like no two bites kind of taste the same because maybe you get a piece of tomato and some lettuce in this one, but this one you get olive and a piece of onion. You know, so. But I think that if I could put myself in a position to support myself with just making music, I would do that. I would do that in a minute. And if like even if I ever hit the lottery, like I would still. That's what I would spend my time doing is making music and helping other people make music.
Of all the songs that you sing with the with Urban Thunder, what is your favorite, if you have one, or one of your favorites, and why? What does it mean?
That's a tough question. Because I have favorites for different reasons. There's like, which one is the most fun to sing? That's my favorite, right? That's this Cree song that we sing for a lot of times for grass dance. It's just a really beautiful melody. It's kind of smooth, and then you get to a point where everybody's kind of really just jamming and like we sound good singing that song. It's a lot of fun. And then it feels weird to actually say this because I don't think I've ever said this before. There's an honor song that I wrote that other singers have come to me and asked me if it's okay for them to sing that song, which is like that just blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like because that's part of the process. Like as a powwow singer, you don't just go and start singing other people's songs. At least you're not supposed to. Generally, at least that's what I was taught. Generally, like you have to be given permission to sing that song by somebody who was given permission to teach other people the song. You know, so like I could go on YouTube and learn somebody's song, and then like if I ever sat down with them, be able to sing it. But I wouldn't go on YouTube and learn somebody's song and then bring it to my guys and teach it and be like, hey, we should learn this and start singing this at powwows. Like that would just be a little weird to do. So yeah, those two songs. We have a grass dance song that goes yeah da 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 yeah da 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 Metona miasa no maha jinke de dano manimi dawen hea hea e wachika be dano manimi dawin chekin kesu no maha Metona miasa no maha jinke de dano manimi dawen hea e wachika be dano manemi dawin chekin kesu no maha and it's just a really it's a beautiful song, especially when you got like 7 to 10 dudes singing that song, because it's smooth, it's mellow, it's just kind of like, hey, we're hanging out. But it talks about like how it's hard to be in the center, like how it's hard to be at the middle of things, And I really love that song. The honor song, I won't sing because you're not supposed to record those. They're special occasion songs. So you don't really record it unless you a drum group could record themselves singing it, obviously. Or if you're singing it for a family that maybe lost a family member or somebody graduated college or something like that. If they wanted to record it to have a copy of the song being sung for them, that would be fine. Oh, you're a lefty too, huh? I knew I liked you for a reason.
Yep. So what's the background of that grass dance?
Yeah. So back in the day on the plains, grass grew pretty tall. There was no lawnmowers, right? So when people would move camp, like let's say they were coming from their winter camp back to their spring camp or moving to their summer camp, the grass would be, pretty tall, at least a few feet. So what they would have is they would have grass dancers would go out and dance on the grass to push the grass down to make a space for the people to camp, right? But what they had to learn to do was be able to push the grass down so that it didn't break, so that way when the camp moved, the grass would stand back up and people wouldn't know that they had been there previously, And so it's called the grass dance for multiple reasons. One, obviously because they pushed the grass down with their feet, but they also used to wear these braids of what's called sweetgrass in their belts. And as they do the dance, their bodies are supposed to be very limber and loose and represent like the wind blowing across the plains grass. Because if you ever see tall grass, when the wind blows, it kind of ripples like that. And so, over time, that the dance has evolved, and the regalia, the traditional clothing has evolved, to the point where there's now, when you go to powwows, sometimes they have a specific category called old style grass, and then they have, just contemporary grass dancing. But there's things about it like anything that you do to one side, you do to the other side, because you want to have a complete circle so that you have balance. So if I do a certain step with my left foot, I have to at some point do that same step with my right foot. You kind of always want to complete the circle. The regalia for quite some time had a lot of yarn fringe, because that was what made it look like grass. So when you move, it would kind of wiggle like that. I have some pictures of me from back in the day when I was grass dancing. That was around the same time as Urban Thunder. I think some of the pictures may even be from us. Rolling Deep. Some of the pictures may even be from us doing events. So I'll send you those pictures too. And then as more materials became available, the traditional clothes evolved. Native folks, we've always been about adaptation, right? Not assimilation, because that's very different, and not appropriation either, because that's also very different than adaptation. If we find something that's useful to us, we will use it, but we're not going to use it under the guise of if you say, oh, this thing is for this, we say, well, can we use it for this other thing? And you say, yeah, okay, then we're going to use it for this other thing. But if you said, no, we only use this for our very specific, practice of this, we go, okay, well, we don't do that. We're not going to mess with your stuff. Which is why you see the problem, people wearing war bonnets, you always see, in clothing ads. You have to earn that. You know what I mean? Eagle feathers are one of the highest gifts you can get as a Native person, right? In order to have enough to have a war bonnet, you had to have done something to earn each one of those fake feathers. You know what I mean? The average person doesn't do anything to earn anything, a bunch of anything, in a given lifetime. You know what I mean? So when you see
those stereotypical.
Yeah. So that's a plains headdress, and that's not even the most common headdress. The more common headdress would be a roach, which looks like, when they talk about a mohawk haircut, it's round in the front and then it tapers down to the back, and it's made of porcupine guard hair and deer tail. So it's got these long light brown hairs on it, which I don't know if you've ever seen a porcupine. Usually people only talk about the quills, but they have these really long hairs on them. Mm. And then for color around the front and down the sides, they use deer tail hair, and they dye it different colors and stuff like that. And that would be the more common headdress. You know what I mean? So, earning the eagle feathers it's not an easy task. It's not oh, I'm going to go do this thing and I'll get an eagle feather. It's you've done stuff for your community. People respect you. People want to honor you to get it. So when you see some random person wearing it, it would be kind of like if you were a vet and you saw somebody wearing the outfit of a general, you'd be like, what are you doing? You didn't earn that, you know. But yeah, getting back to the grass dancer. So again, you know, like the idea, a lot of.
Does that come from any particular group?
No, I mean, it's argued. I mean, it comes from Plains people. There's arguments that it comes from the Hathuska people, Hathuska societies of the Omaha and Pawnee people. There's some people that say it's a Ponca dance. There's some people that say it's a Lakota dance. You know, people in the midst of time, people would try and claim things as being, you know, the first one to start it. And it's not that they're necessarily wrong. It's just that it happened so long ago that it's hard to determine where it actually came from. There are some dances that are a little bit more modern that you know where they came from. Like the jingle dress dance comes from the Ojibwe, my mother's people, Anishinaabe people. And that's a healing dance and a medicine dance. And it's a newer dance in terms of like within the past, you know, couple of 100 years, if even that far back. To be honest, it wasn't that long ago, but you know, so there's a known history. There were enough people around at the time that were still able to pass that information forward. That, you know, but yeah. So the grass dance is one of my favorite styles of dance to watch too, man. Like good dancers look so smooth. They just look so smooth. Before you guys go, I'll show you a really cool video of a grass dancer.
Do you still dance at all?
No. I had some pretty bad knee injuries in the past 6 years. I tore my quadricep tendon in my right leg, which was not fun. If you ever have a chance to avoid that, I suggest avoiding it. Not a good time. And then I also tore my ACL, MCL, and damaged my meniscus in this leg. So my dancing days are pretty much done. Like I miss it though. I miss it like you wouldn't believe. But being able to sing is more than makes up for it. You know, like I never thought that I would do some of the things that I've done because of singing, like being in a movie, being in a video game, you know, traveling to different parts of the country, being able to give lectures on powwow music. You know, none of that was ever on my radar when I first started, you know, singing. It was just like this. I love this. This is fun. It allows me to be with, you know, my people culturally and hang out and have a good time and make sure that people are happy and enjoying themselves. And it's taken me some pretty crazy places. I miss dancing though. I was a really, really good dancer. I know you look at me now, I look like an old retired football player, like, oh yeah, back in my day when we had leather helmets. No. I was actually a well-regarded dancer for quite some time. I just did it for love. Like I didn't compete. Like there's competition dancing at powwows. And when I was growing up, my mom was like, you don't dance to compete, you dance to honor your ancestors. And not that I have anything wrong with anybody competing, because like there are some people that they chose the lifestyle of taking their families to be at powwows and spend as much time as they can around other Native folks. And in order to be able to do that and be able to self-sustain, you know, you maybe have to have a booth to sell stuff. But then, you know, dancing is something that if you love and you're good at it, you know, people want to honor that. And so, you know, there are people that dance competition. But I was never a competition dancer. It was kind of weird that like I go out there and dance during the competitions, but like after the songs are over, they usually have all the people that are in competition line up, right? So the judges can like take their numbers and stuff. And I would just walk off, like I just leave the circle. And people come up and like, yo, why'd you leave? Like you would have taken, you know, second place or first place. Like, did something fall off your regalia? Because like when you're dancing in competition, if something falls off your traditional clothes, you're disqualified. Like, and if you see it, you should, for all intents and purposes, pick up whatever it is you drop and walk out and let everybody else who's competing continue. Mm-hmm. You know, some people will keep dancing till the end of the song because it looks a little weird if all of a sudden one person just stops and walks out. But, you know, that's kind of what you're supposed to do. But competition, you know, it just wasn't something I was raised with, you know. And I've seen some of the dances, and there are some magnificent dancers, and there are some amazing drum groups out there. And so when you get a combination of a really, really, really good drum group and really, really good dancers, it'll blow your mind. It will actually, I think, anybody who sees it, it will automatically make them want to go and investigate their own culture immediately. Like go back and look and be like, well, what do we do? Like, and learn about, you know, how your own culture evolved, you know, and what are some of the things about it that represent expression through music and dance. And it's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Cool.
We are unfortunately running very low on time for the
Yeah.
library.
So two final questions.
Sure.
2 quick questions. What would you say that you do for a living?
I'm a digital artist. I do these paintings and artwork. My sister, who you guys met, was here earlier. She needs me to design a logo for her. I've designed tattoos. I own my own art business. So that's like my main push right now. Career path wise, I would say I'm probably best be described as an administrator, a manager, you know, executive. I've held directorships, like I've been director of operations at a record label. I've been interim director of finance and administration at a nonprofit. Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about what you're wearing?
Okay, so this is, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
This is just a beaded medallion. This one, the medallion portion, this round portion here, was made by a sister named Sokananisi Miles. She's Navajo, Mohegan, and Creek. She beaded this all by hand. You can't really see it from here, but the beads are actually pretty small. I think they're like a 12 or 11 gauge. And then another sister of mine, Brianne Souza Ferreira, she made, Brianne Ferreira Souza, she made the rope portion for me because it broke. But this is just like just a nice piece of native jewelry. You know, like our style, our cultural aesthetic is a little bit different than other people. So the things that we wear for adornment are not necessarily like other places. This is a piece of wampum, which is what's considered the first unit of money in the Americas, like, and you know, especially here in the Northeast, and it's made from a quahog shell. And what they would do is they would, sand them down, grind them down into different shapes and designs, and depending on how intricate it was, would determine the value. So, like, if you were going to make something and you needed a bunch of pieces that looked a certain way, you know, that would be worth so much. In fact, wampum was so important that some of the original treaties between Native folks and the settlers are done in belts. Like, the agreement is essentially, we make this belt and we say, like, this is the bond between us. So I try to keep my powwow bling, you know what I mean? Like the Dali game, if you don't know, the Dali game is serious. Like, if you have a nice beaded piece, people are like, oh, check out Mr. Big Boy, you know.
It's like your regalia.
Yeah. It's like my regular everyday regalia. You know what I mean? Like, it's when I'm trying to look nice, I throw these on. You know, I'll wear like there's people that wear a tie. I'll wear this with a suit. You know, and things like that.
Do drummers have like a kind of regalia the way dancers do?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes you'll get guys that sort of like if they're in a particular drum group, they'll dress alike. You know what I mean? Like they'll be like, oh. You know, they may have colors that they associate with their drum, and everybody wear like a blue shirt, a white cowboy hat, or whatever. But there's some singers that are dancers. There are some that aren't. There are some that wear, you know, depending on what their personal style is. You know, there's some guys that wear button-down shirts. There's some guys that wear T-shirts all the time. But no, there's not really, specific to people who are powwow singers. Bless you.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Good.
that's good for
All right.
our interview today.
Thank you so
That
much.
was really great.